Hi, I'm Malcolm Stern, and in conjunction with my friends John and Sandra Wilson from Online Events, we're creating a series of podcasts called Slay Your Dragons with Compassion. My book of the same name was conceived and inspired by the suicide of my daughter Melissa and the journey that took me on and the internal resources that I found. All of my guests will have a story to tell around overcoming and ultimately thriving through adversity. Special thanks to the band Stairway, Jim McCarty and Louis Chinamo, for the use of theme music from their album Medicine Dance, and my engineer Owen Santiago. I hope you enjoy this series, and thanks for listening. So welcome to Slay Your Dragons with Compassion, a podcast which I've been doing with my friends John and Sandra Wilson at Online Events. And this is a podcast entitled Slay Your Dragons with Compassion because it's about people thriving through adversity and having to find ways of overcoming difficulties in themselves. Today's guest is Russell Byrne, who has been intensively involved with the prison system, with working with prisoners as a counsellor and therapist, and is currently working a lot with alcohol and drug abuse. And so this is quite a sort of like a going in at the sort of like the sort of the deep end of society where there's a lot of pain and probably a lot of ignorance, a lot of sadness that's there as well. So, Russell, what drew you into that world?
I think with the prison service, I got to a point in my life while I was in the UK that I wanted a complete change of direction. I'd worked as an actor for a while, and then worked in a gym, that kind of thing. And I just wanted to do something more meaningful. And through various different circumstances, I got introduced to the prison system. I went for an interview and I got a job. So I was primarily working with men who were either addicts or who were violent, running group with them. And I found it incredibly challenging, but incredibly rewarding. And with drug and alcohol, I worked in the jail in the UK for about 1 year. Then I emigrated here to Australia, where I worked in the prison system for about 7 years. And currently I work in a drug and alcohol rehab. I think with drug and alcohol, I really resonate with my own history of the drink problem, which I developed sort of around about 14. I started drinking and drank for many, many years and gave up about 15 years ago. So I have a real kind of empathy, if you like, and a resonance with people who struggle with addictive behaviour and addictive substances.
So, what drew you into alcohol, and how were you able to overcome that aspect of yourself as well?
Well, I can remember the very first day that I had a drink. As a child, I was very incredibly shy, didn't have any friends. Quite a classic story, really, being bullied a lot. I had a terrible stutter, so I couldn't talk, I couldn't communicate very well, so I felt very isolated. And I can remember going to a party when I was 14, and I had a drink, and it changed everything for me. I suddenly felt I could be who I wanted to be. I felt secure. I felt funny for the first time. People really warmed to my humour. So I kind of learned at the age of 14 that if I had a drink and I got drunk, I could be accepted. That's what kind of got me into it.
And that's probably pretty common, isn't it, as well, that actually you overcome your inhibitions, you
Yeah,
overcome your sort of sense of alienation, and it's sort
that's
of
right.
you sort of groove along with people that you're drinking with. It's probably
Sure.
it's not very probably initially it was very satisfying, but somewhere along the way, this is going to be a story that's typical for people who've been alcoholics.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the way, it stopped being satisfying, presumably.
I mean, it was fun. I'm not going to lie and say it wasn't fun for a very long time. And then suddenly I started having many more arguments. A lot of anger would come up, and it really started to affect my personal relationships. First of all, with my wife, and then with my partner now. And I got to the point where I realised that if I didn't do something, that I would be left. That the relationship couldn't survive it. I just felt that. And I think I tried for many years to stop and I just couldn't do it. And then I went to an AA meeting and I can only describe it as an epiphany. I felt my life had come to a point where I was just so ready to stop. but I had a real emotional kind of catharsis at this meeting. I didn't go to many meetings, and from that moment on, I never drank again. And I can't. It's hard to explain what actually happened. I can just remember being very, very open emotionally, and I just lost the desire. It was an extraordinary experience, actually.
So it was a moment of epiphany that actually came upon you in the meeting, presumably hearing other people's stories
Yeah,
and daring to speak your own.
that's right. Um, yeah, it took. I'd say it took years and years to get to that moment. But when that moment came, it was almost effortless. Um, I suddenly saw all the repercussions of all the damage I'd caused and all the damage I could cause if I continued. Um, it was a wonderful experience, and I got a sponsor, did all the stuff, all that kind of thing. But yeah,
And often when overcoming a sort of an addiction, an addictive behavior of some kind, we migrate from one addiction to another. Did you do that?
yeah. For me it was always alcohol, really. Bit of cannabis. Um, I used to get very I used to look outside of myself a lot for validation. So I did a lot of sort of relationships I'd look for to be seen, to try and be seen as attractive, to be noticed, to be valued, that kind of thing. So that led me into a lot of difficult relationships early on. Um, and I realized it was really at the root, the same root as the alcohol. Um, it's a constant thing. I think it's a constant battle for me to continue to try and really validate myself and see the value of who I am regardless of anything external. It's an ongoing thing, but it's a lot easier now than it used to be.
And I think that's true for a lot of us as well. And presumably, you've had support along the way. You talked about a sponsor in a
Yeah,
so which is a really good support system.
yeah,
And presumably, your relationships changed because when we're working within an addictive environment, when we are addictive, we
yeah.
tend to hang out with fellow addicts, don't we?
Everybody I knew drank. Everybody got drunk every time. It was like my wife didn't drink as much, but whenever we ever went out together, I'd always end up drunk, coming home drunk in the end. And it caused a lot of heartache, a lot of pain for her.
So, but she also drank.
Not like me. I mean, for me, it was like I had to have it or else kind of thing. But she would drink too, but it wasn't like me. Certainly, we couldn't have any wine in the house in the end because I just drink it all.
So, what did your day look like? So you'd wake up and have a drink, or you'd wake up and have breakfast and then have a drink, or you'd wait
For
a
me,
while.
it was mainly evening. I never drank in the morning or anything like that. But my whole day, I was always aware that when I got home from work, it would be the time to kind of have a drink. So I always had a drink as soon as I got home, and then the evening would kind of disintegrate from then on.
Yes.
Um, and I
So,
thought I was being very funny, very intimate, all of that, but it wasn't. In fact, it was an illusion. For me, it
yes,
wasn't
an
what
illusion.
I wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, once you were drinking, presumably you'd shed some of your inhibitions. You'd show up as a sort of, as you said, humorous and
Mm,
what you thought was intimate in relationship, but in fact you were
yeah.
scratching the surface. So
Yeah.
how did that affect your marriage? Did it fall apart, or was there an ultimatum? What happened to break your marriage down?
Well, we've been together for. I met my wife when I was 18. She was quite a bit older than I was, and so we got together. We were together for 12 years. Um, I wouldn't say it was the alcohol that did it. I kind of met Buddhism at drama school, and through a series of meditations, I kind of came to the realization that I was gay, and I had to leave the marriage, um, which was incredibly difficult because I really loved my wife and still do. We were very close. I just felt I just had to have integrity and not. I didn't want to lead a double life, if you like, because I knew people that did that, and it just didn't resonate with me. So I had the terrible experience of having to tell her that I was really confused and I really felt I had to leave, and it was devastating. Probably the hardest thing I've ever been through in my life, to see someone that you love so devastated by what you've done, by what you've said. It's incredibly hard.
And were you already acting out at that stage, or you were sort of like you knew it in the back of your mind?
A little bit. When I look, I mean, to be honest, looking very far back, when I was about 10 or something, I had some kind of, with my cousin, we did some kind of experiment, as I think a lot of young kids do. I just remember him not wanting to continue, and I really wanted to continue. So I was quite aware there was something deeper for me happening than it was for him. And then while I was married, I think there were a couple of experiences, drunken experiences with men at work, that kind of thing. But then I met somebody while I was on a training course, and I knew then that I had to leave. It was very clear because I'd suppressed it because I was grew up in a very small town. It wasn't like London; it was very small, where gay pubs were still blacked out windows, that kind of thing. So it was really taboo and really looked down upon. So I had a lot of shame around it.
And of course, it was illegal in the up till I think the 1980s.
Yeah, I was only probably 20. I was married, but I mean, I didn't do anything then. I mean, this is a long time later. Probably, I think I was what, 30s, in my 30s when I came out, when I left. Um,
And had your
well,
wife suspected that you were gay?
she said not. I did ask her about it, but she was so kind of what really hurt, I think, was her. It made her question her identity as a woman,
Right.
and that really hurt me. And when I left, she said, "If you leave, I'll kill myself." And it was a very difficult choice to make to walk away from a relationship where she was threatening that. And when I did leave, she did try and kill herself. Um, Luckily, she's absolutely fine now. She survived and everything. And the beautiful thing is, we're both incredibly good friends. She came to my wedding with my husband. She's very supportive. She loves me still. We talk all the time. It's a beautiful. It could have been such a terrible ending, but it was a beautiful beginning of something very new in our relationship.
So often in the sort of the breakdown of something, there's a sort of sense that, life has gone to hell. But actually,
Yeah,
there's something about the recovery process that feels very sort of profound as well, that actually you managed to sustain a friendship, that you
that's
managed
right.
sort of like to really dare to live your truth and to actually be with
Yes.
someone. I presume you've been with your husband a fair period of time.
Yeah, I think 23 years.
And
So
how is that, your relationship now?
it's wonderful. I mean, it's like yesterday. I mean, I've always been very lucky with relationships. I've only had three main relationships in my life. It was my wife, then a first boyfriend for 6 years, who then decided he wanted to be straight, so he left. We left each other, and he went back to have kids and all that, which is fine. And then my partner now. So it's been three wonderful relationships, and very proud. I'm very proud of them. That we've been able to maintain friendships.
Yes. And when you were working in prisons, because often people in those environments have very good radars as well. Were you ever sort of challenged about your sexuality in that environment?
I was never challenged about it ever.
Hmm.
I'm quite surprised, to be honest.
Yes. Yes, so am I.
I, I genuinely, I mean, I know they probably talked about me behind my back. I'm
Yes.
pretty sure they did, made fun and everything. And there was one occasion I remember doing a group, and I kind of encouraged disclosure, self-disclosure as well. So I was being quite honest. I wouldn't do that again in a jail environment because they were quite salaciously interested, if you want, in the
Yeah.
finer details of that. And I think it was a mistake to do that. But apart from that one time, never to my face, I really believe that they knew that I cared about them. They could sense it. It wasn't. It wasn't. Sorry, go on.
No, that's really interesting actually, because actually
Mm,
there's something about that the healing in these environments often comes. I'm not just talking about prisons, I'm talking about in difficult environments where people have had their liberty taken away in some degree. There
yeah,
often comes through small acts of kindness become a
yeah,
very large currency in those environments. And it
that's
feels like
right.
genuine kindness coming from you. You weren't doing a job and earning your daily bread in that way. You were
Yeah,
bringing your skill and your beingness to that environment.
I just decided that I was going to accept them and not need them to be different, to love them, if that makes sense. And there was a lot of love expressed in those groups, love for me, love for each other. It was beautiful experience working with men for me is a incredible honor in that way, working
Yeah.
in that way. I love it. Yeah.
I've often looked at, when I talk about the sort of the therapeutic process with people, I've often
Mm.
looked at actually the key ingredient of a good therapist is the ability to love. That if you can
Yes,
truly
I
let go
agree.
of your judgments of others, you're going to be able to go much deeper because they're going to know and they're going to trust you.
Yeah, I agree.
Uh,
I'm not
There
sure
is
where
something
that
very
came
trustworthy
from.
about you, Russell.
Thank
I'm
you.
already from this dialogue I'm sort of seeing. I would trust you. I think you're a straight shooter from what I can see.
I often wonder where I developed that ability to care like that. It's a gift I feel, and I'm very lucky to have it. I haven't sort of worked on it. It's just a natural thing that I've had since I was very young, actually. But whether that may have been a result of my upbringing. My upbringing was quite difficult. My father was very opposite to this. He was very emotionally closed off, angry man, a violent man, that kind of thing. So Irish, all that. So it was. I seem to have developed completely the other side of it because of. I don't know whether it's related to that, but my sister, I have a twin sister. She's also incredibly kind. Um, and deeply caring of others. So I guess it's something to do with our upbringing that we went the opposite direction to how we were taught, if you like. And I'm very grateful in that way for my upbringing that it's created this inside both of us.
Well, we often go one of two ways from a difficult childhood. We'll either become like the parents and then act out and pretty much
Yeah.
replicating a lot of their moves, or we'll be in rebellion against that. So I often thought my son, who's a very straight shooter and sort of very straight down the line, was rebelling against what he saw as a hippie upbringing, and he's
Mm.
sort of like he had no time for that sort of stuff. But I think often we pull against that what been given as the norm. We've been challenging it, and I think the more difficult the upbringing, the more the capacity is for actually finding something different because you're able to look at it and go, "This isn't right." Somewhere in you, you'd have known this isn't right.
Yes,
This isn't how I want to behave.
that's exactly what I think what it is. Yeah.
So, what led you into?
Even with the even
Yeah, go on. I was going to say, what led you into
no,
becoming
it's just
a therapist?
it's a good question. I came very late to it. Acting was always something that I thought this is what I want to do with my life, and I pursued it, despite, and it was so difficult, and I kept on going to overcome the stutter, to overcome the incredible shyness, and yet be pushing myself toward a job that was so much everything that I wasn't in a way. Um, it was I really believe in about. I really think challenging myself is how I want to live my life. So when things are very difficult, if I believe in them, I'll push forward. But it was the acting journey was very hard, and all I wanted was to if I can get. I thought to myself, if I can ever join the Royal Shakespeare Company, that to me was the epitome of well, you've made it. All that. And I finally did get into the Royal Shakespeare Company when I was about 40 or something. And once I'd done that job, I decided I never wanted to act again. I literally
Hit the
decided,
pinnacle. Yes.
well, it was just, it wasn't all that I dreamt it to be because I'd had this dream since I was about, very, very little. And it kind of got it out of my system in a strange way. And then I didn't know what to do with myself
Well, interesting.
because I had,
You probably took the skills that you had learned in the process of acting and
yeah,
working in that way into your therapeutic journey. I know for myself, I wanted to be an actor when I was young. Um,
okay.
I remember being offered. I was offered a part in Lindsay Anderson's If, and it
Mm,
3 months off school, and they wouldn't let me take the time off school. And I was so rebellious after that because I really
yes,
wanted to be an actor. But I think somehow what I've done by becoming a therapist is also by creating a stage, an environment where I'm not acting, I'm not sort of pretending, but I am
yes,
using that stage in a way that I've has always been inside me. And I hear something kindred in you, Russell.
yes. Yes.
So,
I'm just what's coming up for me. I'm just remembering a time at the jail. The evening before group, I would set the chairs out ready for group in the morning. I remember walking out the door, looking back at the chairs in the circle with nobody in them yet, and feeling a thrill of the unexpected. What's going to happen? And we was meant to teach from manuals. They gave us these awful manuals, which I never opened, to be quite honest. Hope nobody ever listens. But I just decided to ditch it and go in there completely unprepared, unstructured, and just see what came into the room and really value everyone. It was thrilling for me. And for them, and it was very different for them. They weren't used to that kind of thing. They could be who they wanted to be. They could swear if they wanted. They could talk about their crimes. They could bring their shame. Everything was kind of permitted in there. And it did something. It created this beautiful vulnerability and intimacy between men who had never had it before. A lot of them didn't have fathers, weren't able to express anything positive toward another man other than hatred and violence. Um, it was
so
an honour.
part of what you brought, Russell, that you brought a place of acceptance, and it feels like anything. And I feel like that as a therapist myself, that actually it's like if I'm ever sitting in judgment, I'm off my center. Actually,
Right.
if you become an environment, which clearly you were in the prisons, clearly
Mm.
you have the capacity to do. If you become an environment where judgment is not in the framework, when you're in role, when you're doing your thing, um,
Yes.
it's recognized. You see, a lot of what's said is I'm teaching my grandmother to stuck eggs here, but a lot of what of this is not spoken. But actually, it's not the spoken word, it's the sort of sense of a capacity to stay present in the face of
Yes.
quite difficult material.
Yes. Well, there was one inmate that was a sex offender from long way back. Everybody hated him. No one would work with him. And I never used to read the case notes. I never saw the point. I wanted to be fresh when I went in.
Yes.
But with him, I did. With him, I don't know why. I did read his file. Very sad, shocking stuff. The whole thing. And I thought, how can I go in there now and be non-judgmental? And yet, I went in there, sat in front of him, and I had no judgment. I was quite surprised at that capacity to kind of, even though I knew what he'd done, I could still feel a deep connection to him. I don't know. It was just that was a wonderful experience as well, and we got on very well. I mean, he trusted me. He opened up a lot to me.
And that's the thing is that you became a safe environment where nothing was safe for him. Presumably, he had to watch
That's
his
right.
back all the time. And so you
Yeah,
became probably in loco parentis in some ways, something of a
yeah,
father figure to him.
yeah. I think so. I
And
remember
you,
one guy hugging me once, and he was saying, "I've never hugged a man in my life, even my father," and that
wow,
felt incredible honor to be
yeah.
given that to be that one, if you like. Yeah.
And obviously something was recognized. Have you just worked with men, or have you worked with women as well?
In rehabs, I work with women, but mainly it's been men mainly.
Yes.
I really like I like working with men.
So did you go through a formal training to become a therapist, or just you sort of morphed across from acting to therapy? What was the road you took?
I did a diploma and I did a diploma. I'm just finishing a graduate diploma now, so I'm kind of doing that the academic side of it. But really, for me, it's more about developing compassion, and I do that through my Buddhist practice. I do that through engaging with the men, always trying to question myself if I feel any judgment. So I believe it's really important to continually work on yourself. So the academic stuff is okay. It, it's okay. It hasn't made me. I don't feel it's made me any better. Um, I think what's
But
made me better is just being with people who I maybe don't want to be with, and discovering that I can be with them through my own, if that makes sense.
well, it feels like your practice is really to be an open book wherever you
Yeah.
are, regardless of the circumstances. And there's a
Yes.
sort of thing of hate the sin but love the sinner, and so this is what I'm looking at with the sexual offender who was there in
Yes.
that actually you met him in his humanity rather than,
Yes.
oh, here's a sex offender, and then he's got that sort of persona on him.
Yeah, exactly.
And probably no one had met him in his humanity in the whole time he'd been in jail.
I really don't believe. I don't think so.
Yeah. So
Everyone hated him. Even the sex offender program wouldn't go and see him. I
yes.
mean, it's a shocking thing. And now I've gone. There's nobody else there. So it's very sad. I think.
And I said some kindredness between us as well. I think that when I did my training in humanistic psychology and all the various things I did, I felt like my training never began till the first client that I saw, and then didn't
Yes.
really take off until the first group I ran. And then
Yes.
I learned on the job. And it's like, yes, I think it's very important to have the basics so we know where the tram lines are. But once
Yeah.
we're there, if we've worked through manuals, and you talked about not even
Mm,
reading the manual, if we work through
mm,
manuals, we become automatons. And I think there's something about if you're with a therapist who is giving you the right answers. It's interesting.
yes.
Mine was doing who's a therapist was actually sort of went onto AI and did a pretend
Mm,
therapy session with AI as the therapist, and it was
mm,
so stilted. I'm sure it will improve
mm,
with time as well, but it was so
mm.
stilted. It felt like the AI could sort of, was affirming him and was doing all the right things, but the soul
Yes.
wasn't there. And I'm sensing that you bring your soul into your work.
I really like to think I do. I can
Yes.
remember the first time I watched Carl Rogers on a video, and I thought that's the kind of therapist I'd like to be. I was really overwhelmed with the intimacy and the vulnerability of him. You know,
Yes. Now, funnily enough, Russell, actually, that's what inspired me as well when I first started, was
really,
was watching Carl
I
Rogers
love.
on video
Yeah,
and seeing this is my sort of man. Whereas I can watch a very brilliant therapist
yes,
who's got all the right answers and who's intellectually profound and has passed a lot of exams, and
mm,
actually feel cold at that because if the heart's
yes,
there, we know it somehow, don't we?
that's exactly right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And what I love, the reason I got in touch with you in the first place after watching a wonderful webinar you did, because when you talked about love in the work, and people don't talk about that. Hardly, you never hear that. But you talk when you said it, I thought this is exactly the kind of person I want to talk to because I totally agree. I know it's a bandied around word and very difficult to talk about what it really means. But I think if you boil everything down for me, it's about that and developing my capacity to love more. Um, I just think it's incredibly important.
I think for me it's the bedrock of therapy.
Yeah.
Actually, if we don't bring that loving heart to our practice, then
Mm.
we can bring our brilliance, but brilliance will only take you a certain distance. There's something
Yeah.
about what you talked about was that place of trust that got established.
Yes.
It wouldn't have been your words; it would have been the sense of feeling accepted, and would have been your words as well, as long as the
Mm.
words were transmissions, as long as the words weren't mealy mouthed.
Yes.
Yeah,
So I'm glad I never read the manual.
yeah, good, good. Yeah, I haven't read many manuals either, and people keep suggesting that I recommend books to them so that help them with their therapeutic
Yes.
practice. And for me,
Yes.
like, what you've described is doing the work through your Buddhist practice.
Yes.
That's very finely aligned with the therapeutic work. Um,
Yes.
and in fact, when I wrote my book, Slay Your Dragons with Compassion, um, I asked Lama Chimi Rinpoche to give me an endorsement. Who's someone I'd met a few times, and what he said is this is basic Buddhism. I didn't consider myself. I mean, I have a real affinity to Buddhism. If I
Mm.
look around my flat, I can see quite a lot of Buddhist images, but I didn't think of myself particularly as a Buddhist. But I think that philosophy has also impacted on my work.
Yeah.
So.
I, I mean, I never tried to. I never really spoke about my Buddhism to the inmates, but there were times they asked me about it, and there were times they would meditate with me. You know, so there was
Wow.
something in that as well. I chant, so I would chant, and they would chant with me, that kind of thing. Which is just again, I was constantly overwhelmed by their ability and their willingness to go into an unknown place.
So you were treading an untrodden path, and they were willing to
Yeah.
tread it with you. So in some ways, you
Yes.
created a neural pathway for not just you, but for you and the people that you were working with. You
That's
opened
right.
the line of inquiry that was there.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's been a really great dialogue, Russell. I'm really, really glad that you contacted me, and I
Thank you.
enjoyed getting to hear about your journey, and we're coming towards the end of it now. But what I'm
Okay.
looking at is the question I always ask people at the end of the dialogue is, what's the particular dragon you've had to slay in order to become who you are? And that by that I mean, what's the hurdle you've had to overcome?
Mm. I'm hesitating because I don't think I've overcome it. I think it's going to be a constant battle for me. This sense of just just my own worth, really recognizing my own worth, recognizing that I have something precious to give, I think. And sometimes I feel it and sometimes I don't. It's an in and out kind of process for me. But it's not about financial gain. It's certainly not about academic stuff. For me, it's about really um, finding a sense of pride in myself, I think, um, a sense of value in myself, and knowing that I can create value. Is that enough
No,
answer?
I hear the humility in that, and I think there's a very
Yeah,
fine line between the place of arrogance, where it's
yeah,
I love myself, but and that place of gradually, and I think this is the key, isn't it, that we evolve into what we're going to become. That gradually
yes,
you found a way to love yourself, and in so
yeah.
doing, you're able to love others. And I think that to
That's
me
beautiful.
is archetypal and clear.
Mm. I wonder if there'll ever be a time when one gets to that destination fully. I don't know, and maybe one shouldn't in a way.
Well, there's a great song by Morcheeba said, "Just enjoy the ride,"
Yes,
and I think there is something about the journey is what's important. I don't think we ever get to the destination where we are, unless we're a Dalai Lama or unless we're a Gandhi or
sure.
in those lines. I don't think we ever arrive, but I think the process of becoming is
Mm.
valuable in itself as well. And I
Yeah,
think you're on a journey, as I'm on a journey, as the people who are going to be
yes,
watching this podcast are going to be on a journey, and I think we encourage each other with the stories from our journey as well.
yes, absolutely.
So thank you for sharing
And thank
so
you.
openly.
No, it's been amazing to see you and talk to you. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
It's great, Russell. Thank you very much indeed. Cheers then.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.